It's not just another World War II story. Combat was a groundbreaking TV series that not only brought war to life but blurred the line between entertainment and reality. When Combat premiered in 1962 on ABC, it revolutionized war dramas. Unlike shows focusing on officers or strategies, it immersed viewers in the raw struggles of infantrymen fighting across France after D-Day. With bullets flying overhead and real grenades in hand, the actors endured brutal training that tested their limits, bringing an unprecedented level of authenticity rarely seen before. Unmatched realism and intensity. When Combat premiered in 1962 on ABC, it changed the game for war dramas forever, plunging viewers into the brutal reality faced by infantrymen fighting across France after D-Day. Unlike typical war shows that focused on high-ranking officers or grand battle strategies, Combat zeroed in on a small group of American soldiers, making their survival and struggles intensely personal and raw. The show's creators didn't just want it to look real, they demanded it felt real. Actors underwent a punishing boot camp at Fort Ord in California, where live .50 caliber bullets were fired over their heads and real grenades were thrown, putting them through grueling obstacle courses and intense physical challenges. This wasn't Hollywood glamour. It was close to torture, designed to push the cast to their limits and bring authentic reactions to the screen. Authentic World War II weapons and vehicles were used whenever possible, adding a layer of gritty detail rarely seen on television at the time. Even the language was real. German and French were spoken without subtitles, forcing viewers to rely on context, just like the soldiers would have. Archival war footage was blended seamlessly with filmed scenes, deepening the sense of immersion. This relentless dedication to realism set Combat apart, making battle scenes gut-wrenching and believable, and characters vulnerable, tired, and human. Not fearless heroes, but soldiers simply trying to survive. The intensity on screen echoed the intense preparation off-screen, making Combat a show that wasn't just watched, but felt, a raw, unfiltered experience that haunted its audience long after the credits rolled. Veteran creators and technical advisors. Robert Pirosh, a World War II infantry veteran and Academy Award winner, was the man behind the revolutionary TV series Combat. He knew exactly what war was like, having served on the front lines himself, and he wanted the show to reflect that raw authenticity. His screenplay for the film Battleground was highly praised for its realism, and he used this experience to shape Combat. To ensure historical accuracy, the production hired Major Homer Jones as a technical advisor. Jones was a veteran of D-Day and 4 major campaigns, lending his expertise to every script and battle scene. He reviewed scripts meticulously, correcting mistakes and making sure that the characters acted and spoke like real soldiers would during World War II. This attention to detail went beyond dialogue and actions, extending to the weapons and vehicles used on set. Authentic World War II firearms, like the M1 Garand and the Thompson submachine gun, were standard on set, and the show strived to use real military equipment whenever possible. Another striking aspect of Combat was its use of foreign languages without subtitles. When German soldiers or French civilians spoke, no translation was provided, forcing viewers to rely on context, just as real soldiers would in the battlefield environment. The show also blended archival war footage with its filmed scenes, making the experience feel like a gritty, realistic documentary. Directors with military backgrounds such as Robert Altman, who flew over 50 bombing missions in the South Pacific as a co-pilot, brought a level of emotion and detail rarely seen in TV war dramas, exploring not just action, but the psychological toll of combat. This combined effort of veteran creators and advisors gave Combat its distinctive look and feel, setting a new standard for war dramas in television history. Cast real military experience and intense training. Many cast members brought genuine military backgrounds to Combat, adding a raw edge of authenticity rarely matched on television. Vic Morrow, who played Sergeant Chip Saunders, had served in the Navy, while Rick Jason, Lieutenant Gil Hanley, was a World War II veteran of the Army Air Corps. Pierre Gellar, portraying PFC Paul Lamar, had experience in the Royal Canadian Air Cadets during the war, bringing another layer of realism to the series. Before filming began, the main cast underwent a grueling week-long boot camp at Fort Ord in Northern California. This wasn't your typical actor rehearsal. It involved crawling under barbed wire with live machine gun fire overhead, throwing real grenades, and running tough obstacle courses through mud and rocky terrain. The actors even swung on ropes across muddy ponds. Such intense physical training pushed many to their limits, and some admitted it was more challenging than their actual military service. Instructors warned against overacting or adopting Hollywood cliches like John Wayne's bravado, insisting instead on genuine soldier behavior. This rigorous preparation merged acting with lived soldier experience, as many cast members had actually been through combat or military environments themselves, blurring fiction and reality. The training didn't just prepare them for the physical toll of war scenes, but also elicited the emotional vulnerability and exhaustion soldiers felt on the battlefield. Rick Jason later reflected that the experience gave him a natural authority appropriate for his role. The blend of real military backgrounds and harsh training created performances that resonated deeply with viewers, grounding the show in a powerful truth rarely captured on screen. Iconic characters and conflicting personalities. The show centered around Lieutenant Gil Hanley and Sergeant Chip Saunders, played by Rick Jason and Vic Morrow. Their contrasting leadership styles, calm logic versus raw instinct, created compelling tension on screen. Off-camera, their different acting approaches sometimes caused friction, but the dynamic made the series unforgettable. Hanley was the steady, rational officer who strategized and kept cool under fire, while Saunders was a battle-hardened squad leader, driven by instinct and raw survival skills. This clash between strategy and gut feeling added depth to the characters and brought an authentic layer to the stories. Viewers connected with their struggles because they weren't perfect heroes. They shared real vulnerabilities and moral dilemmas, showing the true weight of leadership in deadly situations. Behind the scenes, Jason was polished and methodical, while Morrow was emotional and instinctive, leading to creative tension that sometimes sparked disagreements during shooting. However, their professional respect for each other never wavered, and their contrasting personalities were crucial in shaping the intense, gripping interplay that defined the series. Saunders wasn't just a tough leader. He had a strict moral code, refusing to abandon wounded soldiers or harm prisoners, which made his character more human and relatable. Morrow's dedication to method acting meant he stayed in character even between takes, and he insisted on performing many of his own dangerous stunts, pushing the realism of the show further. On the other side, Jason's calm, authoritative presence balanced Saunders' intensity perfectly. Together, they embodied the conflicting realities of war leadership, making Combat more than just another action series but a layered exploration of human strength and weakness in combat. Balancing realism with TV censorship. Despite its fierce commitment to authenticity, Combat had to navigate ABC's strict censorship rules. The network demanded intense action, but graphic violence and gore were off limits, forcing the show to dial back on blood and explicit death scenes. As a result, gunfights were frequent, yet the aftermath of battle was often implied rather than shown. This approach made the series very different from modern war dramas like Band of Brothers, which embraced visceral and graphic depictions of war. The censorship limitations pushed writers and directors to focus deeply on character development and psychological tension, exploring themes such as fear, leadership, and moral dilemmas rather than relying solely on battlefield action. This focus created layers of emotional and mental struggle for the soldiers, adding an unmatched depth that set Combat apart. However, some in the production found these restrictions frustrating, especially as Hollywood war films in the early 1960s began pushing boundaries with more graphic content. Movies like The Longest Day escalated audience expectations, leaving the series to walk a tightrope between realism and television standards. Despite these challenges, Combat managed to maintain a raw and unfiltered tone, capturing the exhaustion, vulnerability, and survival instincts of infantrymen rather than painting soldiers as fearless heroes. The show's ability to balance the brutal realities of war with network guidelines showcased creative storytelling under pressure, ultimately influencing how war dramas approach sensitive content on television for years to come. Dangerous filming conditions and tragic accidents. Filming Combat was physically demanding. Many scenes were shot outdoors, in rugged locations with minimal facilities for the cast and crew. One filming site was Coral Winery in California, which provided a realistic European countryside backdrop, but little comfort for those working there. Actors spent long hours wearing heavy costumes, in extreme weather conditions, sometimes running through mud or crawling on rocky terrain. The physical toll of handling real weapons, carrying gear, and performing action sequences was exhausting. The challenges did not end with the location. The show relied on practical effects, including real explosions and gunfire. Safety measures were not as strict as they are today, and stuntmen often played both American and German soldiers to cut costs. In some cases, a stuntman would die in one scene, then switch uniforms and get killed again a few hours later. Despite the risks, the production team pushed forward to create the most immersive war sequences possible. The special effects team used powerful pyrotechnics to simulate artillery fire, sometimes too convincingly. In one incident, an explosion was so realistic that several actors instinctively dove for cover, believing they were actually under attack. This commitment to realism came at a cost. Injuries happened on set, and misfires or poorly timed explosions sometimes caused minor accidents. One of Hollywood's most tragic accidents connected to war dramas involved Vic Morrow during the filming of Twilight Zone, the movie at Indian Dunes, California. Shooting a scene set during the Vietnam War, his character was supposed to rescue two Vietnamese children while running through a river under a hovering helicopter, with explosions going off around them. However, safety rules were ignored. The two children had been hired illegally and were working late at night near dangerous pyrotechnics with no proper permits or supervision. At 2:30 a.m., a mistimed explosion hit the helicopter's rotor blades, causing the aircraft to spin out of control and crash onto the actors below. Morrow and the two children died in the horrifying accident, leaving the crew in shock. The director, John Landis, and others were charged with involuntary manslaughter. The trial exposed reckless decisions made during production, though they were eventually acquitted. This tragedy led to major changes in Hollywood, with the Screen Actor Guild giving performers the right to refuse unsafe work and the Directors Guild enforcing stricter safety protocols. Federal agencies also introduced new rules for using aircraft in films. Steven Spielberg, who co-produced the movie, cut ties with Landis and later said, "No movie is worth dying for." The accident forced Hollywood to take safety more seriously, yet dangers on set have never completely disappeared. Declining ratings amid changing audience tastes. By the late 1960s, audiences were shifting toward lighter entertainment, choosing shows like Bewitched and The Andy Griffith Show over the grim realities of war. Sitcoms and family-friendly programming offered comfort, something that felt more appealing in the uncertain world of the late 1960s. There was also another problem. The Vietnam War was now being broadcast directly into people's homes every night. Americans saw real combat on the news, not in scripted dramas, but in actual footage from the front lines. The violence was no longer something from history books. It was happening in real time, and the emotional weight of it made fictional war stories feel different. Combat had always been praised for its realism, but at a time when war was dividing the country, its stories felt heavier than ever. The audience that once admired its portrayal of World War II was now turning away, looking for something that didn't remind them of the battles still raging overseas. Ratings began to drop, and with them the show's future became uncertain. The shift in public taste and the emotional impact of the ongoing war created a challenging environment for combat, ultimately contributing to its decline in popularity and cancellation. Legacy and lasting impact. Combat, set a high standard for war dramas with its relentless realism and emotional depth. The series didn't just entertain, it honored the struggles and sacrifices of soldiers from World War II, portraying their lives with unprecedented authenticity and complexity. Its commitment to showing soldiers as vulnerable and multifaceted human beings, not just heroes, changed how war stories were told. The close bonds formed among the cast reflected the intense training and shared experiences during filming, and these friendships endured for decades after the cameras stopped rolling. Even though the show ended more than 50 years ago, its impact remains strong. The influence of combat can be seen in later war dramas which strive to blend gripping storytelling with respect for historical accuracy. Unlike many shows that glorify war, combat revealed its harsh realities, sending a powerful message about the cost of conflict. For generations of viewers and creators, it became a benchmark for authenticity and courage in television. The series also sparked important conversations about on-set safety due to tragic accidents linked to its dedication to realism. These lessons have helped shape industry standards today. In the end, Combat is remembered not just as a successful TV show, but as a cultural milestone that reshaped war narratives and left a lasting legacy. Its profound storytelling continues to resonate, inviting us to reflect on the real faces behind the uniforms and the true human cost of war. More than just a TV show, Combat captured the brutal reality of war with chilling authenticity. Its legacy lives on, reminding us how storytelling can honor real sacrifices while shaping how we see history. Next time you watch a war drama, think about the sacrifices made behind the scenes to bring that intensity to your screen. The series pushed boundaries with its raw portrayal, blending real military tactics and weapons with emotional depth. Despite facing harsh censorship and dangerous filming conditions, the cast and crew stayed committed to authenticity at all costs. The stories of Lieutenant Gil Hanley, Sergeant Chip Saunders, and the entire squad went beyond scripted lines, reflecting real struggles faced by soldiers in battle. Though ratings eventually dropped and changing times shifted audience interests, Combat set a gold standard for war dramas still admired today. It reminds us that behind every historical tale on screen lies the sweat, risk, and sometimes heartbreak of those who bring it to life. Their legacy continues to inspire new generations to understand the sacrifices of war through compelling storytelling.